Welcome to all Caribbean entrepreneurs. If you've been ready and waiting to take your business digital and get paid online while you sip something strong on the beach, this podcast is for you. We'll hear from the Caribbean's finest entrepreneurs on topics like e-commerce, business development, brand building, social media, their wins and failures. This is the only place in the region helping you navigate the digital age from the Caribbean's perspective. This is Digipreneur FM. And now, let's give it up for the Digiboss himself, Mr. Karan Rose.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Digipreneur FM podcast. And as usual, it is your host, Mr. Karan Rose. DJ, you know what to do. Fade me out. How are you wonderful people doing? How is everything? How is your week going? I hope it has been productive so far. I hope. February 2nd. How are we here already? February. Oh boy, you know what? I had a whole episode planned. I had sketched out, wrote down my notes for an episode, and during the course of making that episode and doing some research, I went down a rabbit hole, and I ended up saying, you know what? The episode that I had started to write for, I'm going to do for the following episode, because this episode and the topic for this episode, it just pissed me off. I ain't gonna lie. It really just, it hurt my head. It hurt my soul. It pissed me off. So this episode is a bit of a rant. Episode number 60 is a bit of a rant. And the reason for the rant, the topic of today's conversation, is the banks are holding back Caribbean e-commerce. The banks are holding back Caribbean e-commerce in a big, big, big way. It's mind-boggling that in 2022, the banks are just, they're hurting us. And the sad thing is that the people in the banks, because the people that work at the banks, the people that are that are filling these positions that have decision-making power, because they themselves are not business owners, they don't understand the plight of the business owner. They follow their rules and regulations, and Lord knows in the Caribbean, our rules and regulations are 20, 30 years behind. All right? Now, we're a developing region. I could understand that. But I think in 2022, I think we're allowed to be a bit frustrated because we should be further along, and there's so many things that you would think are just common sense that the banks would start to do. And we're going to talk about a couple of things. You would think it'd be just common sense for them to do, but day by day I realize that common sense is a superpower. And it really is a superpower. It is as rare as a superpower. Nowadays, when you see businesses or institutions acting like they have some type of common sense, they might as well be Superman. They might as well be Wonder Woman. They might as well be. So how are the banks holding back Caribbean e-commerce? Well, the topic that I'm going to get into for my next episode is I wanted to tackle how to get paid on Shopify in the Caribbean, right? It's a question that keeps on coming up. I want to talk about it, and I'm going to lay out the options of how to get paid, but that's going to be the next episode. For today, while I was going through all of the different platforms and the different options and the tools and trying to consolidate all the information, see if there's anything that has changed in order to allow access for Shopify payments, right? Here in the Caribbean region, you're on the bank's websites and there's almost no information about nothing. How in 2022 e-commerce, we're still in COVID, we're still in the heights of the pandemic, and there is almost no relevant and tangible information about e-commerce on your platforms. You're digging and digging and digging, and the most you can get is what documents you need to apply for their e-commerce solution. That's it. What documents you need, and if you want anything else, you have to contact them. In 2022, your information needs to be laid out on your websites. Business owners do not have the time to sit on the phone with your representatives, if you guys even answer the phone. We don't have the time to wait an hour to get to somebody. And because your e-commerce units are usually specific people, half the time they don't answer the phone because they're either busy helping someone else or they're not at work today. And then we have to call down the list to see if somebody else in your department can help. We don't have to go through that when you're reaching out to PayPal. We don't go through that when you're reaching out to Stripe. And I use those two because they're the two global leaders in payments, right? But we don't have to go through the ring around the rosy to get information about the fees. And let's talk about it, right? So while I'm going through the websites, I went through Scotiabank. I went through First Citizens Bank. First FCB is a bank here in Trinidad. I also went through Republic Bank, another Trinidad bank. I went through Scotia, FCB, Republic, and RBC. Scotia and RBC are both regional banks, right? And also CIBC. And nobody has their information just laid out in terms of fees, integrations, what does their solution work with? They don't have none of this. Everything is to call or send an email or here are the documents and you could apply online. It's going to take you a week to 2 weeks for us to even get back to you. This cannot be happening in 2022. Matter of fact, the same information that I'm reading is the same information that I recall from 2020. It really hasn't changed. The information on your websites really has not changed. Sure, some of you guys have launched your new white label solution, and we're going to talk about that. But for the most part, the information about what you guys need to do e-commerce, it really hasn't changed. It really hasn't changed. And it's not working in the interest of small to medium businesses, because when we go through the fees, these things are things that only enterprise or corporate could really get involved with, right? But let's dive into it. So here's what I gathered going through the websites. I'm going to go through each of the banks, right? So Scotiabank is the worst by far. They have no information online. All Scotiabank tells you is that they do internet processing, aka e-commerce, and they tell you about the cards that they accept, but you need to contact them for any information. So they're not even telling you what documents you need to apply. They're not telling you anything. They're just telling you straight up, hey, we do it and we accept these cards, but you're going to have to call us for any sort of information. I jumped over to First Citizens Bank. First Citizen tells you about the documents that you need to apply for their e-commerce account or their merchant account, as it's most commonly called. But nothing about the fees. They don't tell you anything about, what platforms that you could integrate with, right? They don't tell you that their partner is First Atlantic Commerce. the information just isn't there. The most they're telling you on their website is about the documents, and also if you check out their new white label solution. And if you guys do not know what a white label solution is, basically it's when somebody partners with another company, but rather than the company that they're partnering with use their own branding, they just rebrand it so that it looks and feels like their own product, but it's really the product of another company. So in this case, all of the banks, and this is not just Trinidad, this is throughout the Caribbean, all of the banks partner with two main companies. If you want to integrate a payment processor on your website, all of the banks integrate and work with First Atlantic Commerce. But then the white label solution that I'm going to be referring to is a partnership with a company called Figaro, Fygaro, Figaro. They're based out of Costa Rica. And they partner with almost every single bank throughout the Caribbean and Latin America. And that's allowed the banks to white label the Figaro solution and rebrand it and put it up as a product under their name, and they give it a nice little name. So like First Citizens Bank, they call it Easy Biz. Republic Bank calls it ePay, but it's just a rebranded Figaro solution, right? And we're gonna dive into that. So you get information about what Easy Biz is, but they don't have any of the pricing information on their website, and they give you a little video demo, but that's about it. There is no information about pricing. If you want to know about the pricing and the different tiers of solutions, then once again you got to call them. You got to contact them. All right. Republic Bank, I couldn't find any information about merchant accounts. All right, so I couldn't find any information about the merchant accounts or their partnership with First Atlantic Commerce so that I could integrate the payment solution on my own website. The only thing I could find is the ePay solution, which again, white labeled from Figaro. They tell you all the things that you need to apply, but again, they don't tell you about any of the costs of services. None of that stuff is online. You got to call them. RBC is the only bank that says, hey, we do work with First Atlantic Commerce, right? They do tell you that, their solution is easily plug and play, but they don't make any mention of what platforms that they work with, okay? They don't even tell you about any of the documents that you're going to require or any of the costs associated with any of the services. They give you none of that information. Once again, you have to call them to get it. All right. The banks are failing at leading the way in getting people to understand the bigger picture when it comes to e-commerce. They're not telling you anything when it comes to e-commerce. But again, the people that work at the banks do not know anything about e-commerce. They are partnering with a payment gateway in FAC. They're partnering with a solution, Figaro, and they can regurgitate that information. But the banks, at this point, you guys need to be working with e-commerce specialists who can paint a digital roadmap for businesses that are coming to you that are looking for you guys for assistance. You guys need to be able to tell people the differences between going with your own platform via WordPress or Shopify, the benefits of each of these platforms. You guys need to be teaching people how to drive traffic to these platforms in order to get sales. How the integration works with FAC. The differences between going that route versus going the route of your solution. There should be content religiously educating people on e-commerce, especially because the entire region, e-commerce is new for them. They haven't been thinking about e-commerce prior to COVID. You guys need to be leading the way religiously, and you have failed. We're 2 years into the pandemic. We're going on year 3, actually. You have failed. You are failing and have failed. You are doing nothing to progress e-commerce or online business in the region. Simply making the partnership and offering it to people is not enough, because guess what? We're going to be going through the fees and some of the things that you need to even get the solution with them, right? So the fact that you're not even telling people about the fees is a big problem, right? Unless they call. It's a big problem because the reality is that if you are a business owner, you're working throughout the day, you have a lot of stuff to worry about. And then the time where you probably get to look and do your own research to grow your business is usually going to be at night or early in the morning when, guess what? Those people at the banks are not working. So now you got to schedule time out of your day to make contact in order to get the information that you need. And that doesn't make any kind of sense, all right? So let's take a look at some of the fees, because the fees I actually had to get from back channels to get the fees for each of these banks. So this is the cost if you need to open up a merchant account or an e-commerce account with the banks. Depending on where you are in the Caribbean, you want to go to your bank, because remember, there's going to be some banks that are unique to your country. So you want to be able to go to your bank and ask them about the merchant account or the e-commerce account and ask them about their fees. Because First Atlantic Commerce, that payment gateway, works throughout they pretty much work in every single Caribbean country. So we have e-commerce available to us, right? But each of the banks are going to have their own fees for the merchant account solution, so that, again, you're going to have to go and ask them what those fees are. So let me give you guys the fees for the banks here in Trinidad and Tobago, and that'll give you guys an idea as to what you could be looking at with your own home bank. So Scotiabank, for a merchant account, charges $200 US a month and 25 cents per transaction, and you have to negotiate the fee of the transaction fee. So, when you do credit card payments, on average, it's like 3%, but most banks will charge anywhere from 3 to 5%. But Scotiabank will allow you to negotiate depending on the approval process or your business. You can negotiate between that 3 to 5%, right? But you're paying Scotiabank $200 US a month for their merchant account. And then you'd be able to go and get the First Atlantic Commerce payment gateway set up. And then you could integrate it into your website. And you would have to go to First Atlantic Commerce's website to see what platforms do they integrate with. They integrate with Shopify. They do integrate with WordPress. They even have an integration with Wix now, I believe. And there's a couple other platforms that they integrate with, right? So you want to go on First Atlantic Commerce's website to check out what platforms they integrate with. Republic Bank charges $75 US a month and 50 cents per transaction. And again, you negotiate the 3 to 5% transaction fee. Royal Bank charges $150 US a month, 50 cents per transaction fee, and 3% for the transaction fee as well. So remember, the transaction fees, they charge you the cents per transaction, plus there is that percentage fee, that 3% or anywhere between 3 and 5%. And that's every time somebody makes a payment, right? And then CIBC, well, to even have a conversation with CIBC, you need to have $300K in capital before they're even talking to you. All right? They want you to have $300K in the bank before they even talk to you. So I won't even get into that, because the majority of the people that are listening to this podcast are small to medium businesses anyway. And then the people who are in corporate that listen to the podcast are usually not business owners. So, but they're listening to it for other purposes. Anyways. And FCB charges $100 US per month, 25 cents per transaction. And again, the 3 to 5% per transaction fee. That's expensive. That's out of reach for most small to business owners. And this is if you decided you wanted to go through the bank and take out their e-commerce solution with your own website. So what the banks decided to do with Figaro is they have the partnership with Figaro, all right? And you guys could go to Figaro's website. It's fygaro.com. You guys can go check out the solution. It's a pretty good solution, right? And they all have they have this partnership, and they essentially use the rates from Figaro, and that's what your monthly fees would be. So let's just say if you wanted invoicing alone, where you could send out a digital invoice to people anywhere in the world, and they would pay you, right? That starts for one user at $10 a month, right? And you could send out unlimited invoices and get paid. Let's just say if you want to have embeddable payment buttons onto your social media or onto your website, that starts at $15 a month, all right? Starts at $15 a month. And they give you a bunch of other stuff for admin purposes and whatnot, but that's essentially the core of the service right there. Payment buttons and also the digital invoices. But let's just say if you want to use their solution for websites, so you want to be able to have the website, you want to send the invoices, you want to have the payment buttons and whatnot, that solution for one user starts at $45 US a month. So if you go the route of the white label solution from the banks, that Figaro solution, then you are paying the fees that you're going to see on Figaro. But let's just say you have a Shopify or you have WordPress or Wix, then you have to open up a merchant account, and that would be the fees that I had listed out not too long ago. All right. Not everybody wants to utilize the white label solution. All right. Most businesses want to have their own platform. They want to have their Shopify. They want to have their own WordPress. Or they want to have their own Wix because they're comfortable with that. But the amount of money that you have to pay to be able to use these things, and keep in mind, after you pay those merchant fees, you still have to go to Shopify and pay the Shopify fees. And the Shopify alone starts at $30 US a month. So just imagine you're paying $150 US a month or $100 US a month, and then you still got to go and pay minimum $30 US a month for Shopify. That is not feasible. That's not feasible for, again, most businesses in the small to medium bracket. And if you're a solopreneur, then it's definitely, I mean, unless you're caking. This is really going to emphasize that even if you did want to go to this route, right? Even if you did want to go down this route, this is really going to emphasize on your pricing strategies and, on your sales strategies, because you're going to have to come up with that as a base every single month. Now, if you were to, convert it into your own currency wherever you are, that's still cheaper than a physical brick and mortar. So keep that in mind too. Even though these fees are kind of high, that's still cheaper than a brick and mortar. So you guys are accustomed paying high fees to do cost of business because your rent fees are expensive, right? So if you had a brick and mortar, you guys know the cost of doing business. You have to make X amount of money to be able to break even, and then after that, whatever, right? So it's the same concept. So again, even while you're listening to this, even though you're hearing these fees, you're like, wow, that's a lot of money. It's a lot of money in comparison to, you're thinking about PayPal or Stripe, where, they're not charging you a monthly fee. They're charging you a transaction fee, and their transaction fees are pretty sizable. They're charging you a transaction fee per transaction, but if you don't make any sales, then you're not out of pocket, right? So if you're comparing it to that, then yes, it's expensive. But if you do go this route, then, again, chalk it up to the cost of doing business. You got to make sure that your pricing strategies are on point so that you can cover the cost of doing business, right? So that's a big thing that you guys have to keep in mind. But again, these are things that the banks, this is the type of content the bank should be putting out. The banks should be leading the conversation in, business strategies and e-commerce strategies. They should be the ones doing it. You guys are pushing e-commerce solutions. You guys are throwing solutions down our throat, but the average person doesn't understand what they're getting into. And I'm sorry, I'm not calling you. I'm not calling. Many of us are not calling. We want to be able to go on your website and do as much of the research as possible. We want to be able to see that information in front of us so that we're not just relying on the sales rep to sell to us, because again, there's a lot of pressure in that conversation. We want to be able to get the information, read it without having to make contact with you first. Like it's 2022. That is just common sense. You go on any platform, any business in the world, you go on their websites, all of the information is laid out there so that we can do our homework and research. And by the time we call you, it's because we have already made a decision to go with you. You're failing us, and you're failing us tremendously, and you guys continue to fail us. It is just insane at this point. And like I said, I'm sorry. I don't usually, jump on the podcast and have a rant, but I just felt like this topic needs to be addressed. And I know the types of people that listen to the podcast. I know that many of you are in positions of power. I know the types of institutions that listen to the podcast. So I did feel it was necessary to come out and talk about this because change has to happen. It has to happen. Somebody in the banks needs to get a clue, because none of you guys have it. And it's clear. It's clear you don't have it. It's clear you have no clue. It's clear that none of the banks have a clue, because if you did, we wouldn't be talking about it. We would not be talking about this right now, right? We simply wouldn't. So this will come back down to you as the business owner, you having to gather a lot of the information yourselves to be able to make a good, solid decision about how you go about building your online business or taking your business online. To me, the best solution is still WordPress with WePay, because you don't have you can start a WordPress site. WordPress hosting can start as little as $3 a month, and you could use a free theme that WordPress gives you or one of the hosting companies gives you to get started. And the WePay plugin, they don't charge you a monthly fee for the WePay plugin. So that's still like the go-to solution for me. But over the next couple of episodes, we're going to be talking about the different platforms, because people want to utilize a Shopify. They want to utilize a Wix. And hey, there's no problem. But I want to be able to gather all the information and give you guys so you guys understand how you're getting paid, right? We can get paid in the Caribbean with Shopify. We can get paid in the Caribbean with Wix. We cannot get paid in the Caribbean with Squarespace. And again, we're gonna go through it. So I'm gonna have separate episodes kind of breaking down each of those platforms, the costs, what you need to be able to get those payments. This episode was really just, again, a rant. I'm trying to get information from the banks about what is needed and costs. And I'm like, I don't want to call y'all. None of the information is public. I literally had to go through back channels to get the pricing information about what you guys charge for the merchant account services, because you have it listed nowhere. That's a big problem. Banks, you guys need to do a whole lot better. If you want people to be signing up and utilizing your payment solutions, you guys need to be educating the entire region about the payment solutions, teaching people about digital strategies, e-commerce strategies, marketing strategies, how to drive traffic. None of y'all are doing it. None of y'all are doing it. And even what I've seen is terrible. Even what I've seen from you guys is terrible. Nobody's doing a good job. No, I have not seen a bank do a good job. Everything I have seen from you guys is just basically ads, and the information you guys want to put out, the webinars you guys want to put out, doesn't help. It's garbage. You guys need to do better. I got to call a spade a spade. The information you guys are putting out helps nobody. The webinars that you guys are putting out help nobody. It is a continual intellectual masturbation that you guys do. You just want to look like you guys are doing something with with almost every single webinar that you guys put out. We bring in a bunch of people to talk. Webinars, listen, in 2022, webinars need to just not happen. Workshops need to happen. Don't be bringing in people to talk and flap their gums and again, continue this intellectual masturbation. We need workshops with people teaching, getting us from point A to point B. And if you guys don't have any strategists internally, because you don't and it shows, then start to find people who know about e-commerce and not American people that are teaching us e-commerce from their perspective. We need y'all to find Caribbean e-commerce specialists that can teach us how to utilize WePay, how to utilize First Atlantic Commerce, how to utilize your white label solution. How do we drive traffic? How do we become Googleable? How do we make sales? If you guys are not doing that, if you guys are not putting and spending your money and energy and investing into the workshops and the teachings, then don't bother. Just don't bother. Don't bother put on a webinar. Don't bother put out an ad. Don't bother, because you're wasting your time, and all you are doing is you are hurting the entrepreneurs, because you guys are only speaking about your solution. You're only advertising your solution. And people don't understand how that solution works in the grand scale. They don't understand the limitations of your solution. They don't understand how to get the best out of your solution, because you guys yourself aren't strategists and teaching these things. So I'll end my rant right there. Definitely, you guys can go and check me out on social media. I'm at Karen Rose on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. I'm most active on Instagram and LinkedIn, also over on TikTok as well. Don't forget to check out the KarenRose.com website. We talk about, marketing your business, building your business online, building your digital presence, how to monetize your platforms. Don't forget to check out the digipreneur.fm website to subscribe to the email list and the notification list to ensure that you don't miss an episode ever. All right? Rate the podcast if you guys are enjoying it. Drop a review. Those things continue to help build the Digipreneur family across the globe. That is it for me today, folks. Have yourself a wonderful day and take care.
You've been listening to the Digiboss, Karan Rose. We hope your notepad was filled after this episode. Make sure to like, rate, and review the show. The learning doesn't stop, folks. And to make sure you don't miss any gems from the Digiboss, go over and follow him on all social media platforms at Karan Rose. Folks, don't just sit there with a notepad. We need you to implement at least one thing into your business before the next episode. That's the only way your business levels up. Thanks for listening to Digipreneur FM. Now go be great.